It's time for Chained No More, a place to find people who genuinely care about you and what you are living. Everybody has stuff, so let's talk about it. Welcome to a place you will find acceptance, understanding, and encouragement, as well as effective tools and resources to help you find healing from your stuff and help you move forward. Your host, Robin Beesman, is the author of Chained No More, a journey of healing for the adult children of divorce and childhood brokenness. Robin has had many years of experience of ministry to single-parent families, as well as mentoring and teaching women and kids. Robin and her expert guests will not beat you over the head with a Bible, but will combine faith and practical tools to help you with topics such as issues of divorce, relationships, single parenting, step families, abuse, and other personal struggles. Robin is ready to help you believe in who God says you are and not what anyone or anything has ever told you. So sit back, relax, and be encouraged and enlightened today on Chained No More. Now, here is your host, Robin Beesman.
Hey, listeners, and welcome to Chained No More. I'm Robin, your host. We're going to have a fun hour, but one that will address a topic many of us live, and most of us have lived sometime in our life, whether we are married or not. The topic is loneliness. The dictionary describes it like this: feeling alone, depressed, feeling of being alone, destitute of sympathetic or friendly companionship or support, solitary, standing apart, isolated, and listen to this one, a lonely tower. Wow, what a word picture. Listener, is that what you're feeling right now? Have you become isolated? I have several single friends of mine who are very lonely and want someone in their life to love them, care for them, and someone to come home to. They need some encouragement and some answers, and that's why I called my guest to be on the show today. Whether you are alone because of divorce, loss of a loved one, family situations, or by choice, loneliness can creep in, and before we know it, we may have isolated ourselves and become depressed and feel like we are on the outside of life looking in. My guest will address this and so much more as we explore this important topic today. Her name is Chris Watako, and she is the director of the Singles Network Ministries. Her passion is to minister to single adults and help them thrive and live a life of joy. She gets it because she's not been married and is following God's call in her life in so many amazing ways to singles around our world. She is what I call a fun-loving nut, but she is a strong woman of God and one who will encourage you and give you practical tools. I would love to introduce a ministry colleague and a new friend of mine, Chris Watako. Hello, Chris. Let's talk about this.
Oh, I'm excited. Thanks for having me again, Robin.
Yeah, listeners, I called her because I had some friends that were talking to me, and they were pretty sad about and feeling so lonely, and I didn't know what to say to them really. And I said, I know who to talk to, and I called her right up. I said, Chris, I need you on my show, and thank you so much for coming on here, Chris. I appreciate it a lot from you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, why don't you just remind us, just to start off, of how God led you to the ministries you do? So your story, what's your story?
Well, when I was in my 20s, I got involved in a singles ministry, and part of it came out of the need of actually being lonely. I really needed community. I needed people that were going through some of the things that I was going through. And I got involved in a large ministry in my 20s, and I hugged the walls for the first few months because I wasn't really sure. But as time went on, I ended up getting involved, and that, as a result of that, I became a leader. And that leadership, then I just knew that there had to be other singles that were out there that were just sitting at home doing nothing. And a lot of them were isolated. A lot of them were struggling. Of course, at the time I was in my 20s, I wasn't thinking much about people that were divorced, whereas now it's a large part of what I do does minister to people who are divorced or widowed or single parents. But back then it was mainly just young singles. But they were still dealing with a lot of the same struggles. And so I just felt like the Lord really wanted me to help them because I had found the right way to go. And I had seen God move in my life and change my life, that I wanted to help others to do the same. And that was, I did it as just a volunteer for many years. And then about almost 20 years ago, I started in full-time ministry. So
20 years. Are you 20 years old?
Oh, yes. Okay,
that's my sweet talking moment. Just that, and that's all. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
we
for
don't talk
sharing
about
that.
age anymore. I used to wonder why people never mention. Now I know. Yeah, we don't talk about age. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, whatever.
So
I will say that in my 50s, my mantra for being in my 50s was because I can. So, and now it is I will because I want to. So
yes,
it
yes.
does get good. It does get good. All right. So today we're talking about single adults and the subject of loneliness. And Chris, I'm just to ask you, have you ever experienced deep loneliness in your life and what that looked like?
Well, there's been two specific times. One is when I was a young child growing up. My father was never around, and although my mom was legally married, we were pretty much raised by a single mom. And then my mom would eventually, after I got into my teens, she would marry a wonderful man. And by that time, I was kind of stuck in who I was. And I noticed at a very young age, Robin, I was very independent. And because my mom needed my help, it kind of added to that independence. And unfortunately, that independence led to being very lonely. I remember into my 20s, I felt like I had to do everything myself. I had to take care of myself. I had to make the decisions myself because there was no one there that was going to do it for me. And I actually created a lot of my own stress due to that. I didn't know who God was. I did not have a relationship with him. And even if I was going to church and going to Bible study and learning, I still did not have that deep, deep knowledge of what he was in my life. And so I remember even into my 20s, even once I started doing ministry, I remember still just so independent, Robin. So I'm going to take care of myself. I don't need nobody to help me. Leads to just a deep, deep loneliness and feeling very separate from other people. Fast forward into my adult years and into the last, I would say, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, my father passed away. And I had, up until that time, I had never really dealt with any type of depression. Loneliness is different than depression. Definitely you can become depressed after being lonely. But
Mm.
mine was more so of just the deep sense of loss of my father. And when I didn't realize just he was my stepfather too. Let me clarify that. I did not realize just how much he had been in my life until he was gone. And I remember going through this again. Wow, I mean, Lord, you're taking me through this another period of loneliness. But for me, it wasn't loneliness anymore. It was just aloneness, and there was the biggest difference.
And that was, I was going to ask you about that. When we say we're lonely, maybe we're really saying that we are alone. So what is that difference?
Well, for me, the way I've learned it and the way I've read and done my own research, lonely is saying if you're a believer, if you follow Jesus Christ, lonely means that I don't have hope, that I have no future, I have nothing to look forward to, and that would lead anybody to depression.
Absolutely.
But when you call yourself a Christian and you're following God, you have hope because you have hope in Him. So what I was really saying, and this is one of the things that I talk to other singles and married people as well, be very careful putting that word of loneliness on you because you're saying to people, I have no hope. But what you're really saying is I'm just alone and I do not like it. And it's okay to say you don't like it. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad because sometimes being alone is not fun. But
Yeah.
there are times when it can be good. And so with me, what I was realizing is part of me being alone I didn't like, but I created a lot of the stress of being alone by the fact that I would not rely on God. I kept relying on myself. I trusted myself more than I trusted anybody else.
When did that change for you, Chris?
Well, there was a day, it was so funny. I was sitting in my living room and I was just sitting in my quiet chair. I just had this big comfy chair that I like to sit in. And I felt this pressure that everything was on me. I was living alone and in my home and I was, the gutters needed to be cleaned and the yard needed to be mowed. And I know the house needed to be painted. And all of a sudden, I realized, wow, there's bills that are due and I need to go to the dentist. And all of a sudden, I made a mistake of watching a Hallmark movie and that
Oh
just
no.
really
Oh
gets you
no.
so excited, and then I was finding myself reaching for a bucket of ice cream and I'm sitting there and I just,
Yep.
and I just said, man, is this it? Is this the way it's always going to be? Am I always going to feel like it's all on me?
Yeah.
When does someone else get to share this with me? When can I have someone in my life that will help me take some of this off of me, that I don't have to worry about the yard work all the time and the maintenance of the house and the bills, that everything. And then God says, I've been here all along. I said, yeah, okay, that's a good God, but I'm talking about a man, you know. I'm talking about, I want this person.
Yeah.
And so he said, even if I gave you one, is that going to guarantee this is going to change? Because you need to rely on me, not a person. And so it was just like a light bulb that went off. And I clearly remember it, Rob, and I clearly remember sitting there. And do you remember the game? I mean, we're going to age ourselves right now, Kerplunk.
Yeah.
And it was this, plastic tubing thing that marbles were inside.
Yeah.
I literally felt that I was trying to hold up all the marbles with my strength. And I was so afraid. It's like spinning plates. I was so afraid that one of those little sticks was going to come out and I was going to lose something that I had been controlling, that I had been responsible for. Everybody's, got to look good, got to have it all together. And I remember God pulling out one of the straws or the little sticks. And I'm like, whoa, wait. And he pulls out another one, And he says, Chris, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make sure your bills are paid. I'm going to protect you. And I'm going to feel that broken part in your heart that longs for someone. I'm going to feel that. And we're going to get through this together. And I literally, Robin, I remember I could almost hear those marbles falling. And I said, oh, my gosh, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to do it. And at that point, it changed. But please know, I mean, there's the enemy's clever, so he will find some other way to get you to trust him versus God. And so, there was still the next many, many years, there's still times that I'd get a little panicky or, whatever. And then God would go, excuse me, he'd whisper, remember, I own it all. I own it all. I'm going to take care of you.
Chris, we're going to go into the first break and you can continue afterward. But you've heard her heart, and this is exactly what I've been hearing. And as you have explained this, how you felt. And I am so glad, Chris, that God called you on this show because it's going to help a lot of people. We'll talk to Chris on the other side of the break.
Host and author Robin Beesman returns after this short break for more conversation on Chained No More.
Do holidays and celebrations get you down and leave you feeling frazzled? Then join Sandy Fowler and her guests on Heart-Filled Holidays every Monday at noon, 11 a.m. Central on TogiNet.com. Sandy will help you discover the secrets to having the celebrations you've always dreamed of while adding fun and meaning to your life. From Valentine's Day to Christmas to special family events, Sandy Fowler will show you how to put the fun and meaning back into those special days by taking a look at what we can do to turn the upcoming holidays into cherished memories and show us how to allow it to intertwine with everyday life. For more on the show, Sandy, and to receive Sandy's Holiday Happiness booklet, go to heartfilledholidays.com. Then get set to discover the secrets to creating happy holidays and happy everydays by joining Sandy Fowler and her guests on Heart-Filled Holidays every Monday at noon Eastern Standard Time on TogiNet.com.
Have you heard? The pages of American Patchwork and Quilting magazine come to life on our new weekly online radio show, American Patchwork and Quilting. Join Pat Sloan, our blogging and quilt designer host, as she talks about the latest trends, ideas, and inspirations. Her guests include quilt pattern designers, authors, quilt shop owners, and our editors. All quilters, just like you. Call in with your questions. Get quilting tips from industry experts. Learn about free patterns. Hear behind-the-scenes stories from our magazines, American Patchwork and Quilting, Quilt Sampler, and Quilts and More. Get the scoop on free stuff and find out more about the best independent quilt shops in North America. To listen to a live show, tune in Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Just log on to allpeoplequilt.com/radio. To hear past shows, go to iTunes and search for American Patchwork and Quilting Radio. We hope you'll join us because we know that quilting changes everything.
Welcome back to a place you'll find acceptance, understanding, and encouragement, as well as effective tools and resources to help you find healing from the stuff that gets in the way of your making emotional progress. Now with more of today's Chained No More, Robin Beesman.
Hi, listeners. We're talking with Chris Fataco, and the topic is being alone and loneliness and all of that. So, Chris, you were talking about how it changed. You changed your life in this. Is there anything else you wanted to share? Or do you want to move on?
Whatever you feel, it's fine. We can move on.
Okay.
It may come back.
Yeah, because we can. So there you go.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what could possibly be positive about being alone? Let's talk about that.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people are like, there's nothing positive, Chris. It's just, because being in the middle of ministry and traveling and teaching, I hear it over and over and over. Just this, how do you, just the idea of being by yourself and having to make all the decisions. And sure, I think it is very tough. But when you do have a Savior and you have a strong relationship with God, it helps you to remember that He's going to take care of those things. So then where does the value of being alone come from? You're like, I think personally, Robin, most people God meant to be married. But I know married people that have struggled with being lonely. So that can't be the cure by no means.
Absolutely.
But what they're just saying is like, I just don't want to be by myself having to go through life. And so for me, the value first is God sometimes needs you to be alone so he can talk to you. If you've ever tried to get to know a person by yourself, like if you're sitting across the table from a friend and you're trying to get to know that person, think about all the things that distract you.
Yeah.
So there's other people at the table. There's the TV over your head, which seems to be in every restaurant today, which I think is the enemy plan of those things. There is the waitress, the food, your stomach, your cell phone that seems to sit on the table. Okay, you can't seem to function today without having your phone beside you. So all these things distract you from having a conversation with that person. So how do you get to know that person? So the same thing with God. How do you get to know God when you allow all these things to distract you from having a one-on-one with Him? And so He wants to get you by yourself, and He will do a lot of things. He'll allow a lot of things in your life to get you to where all you have is Him. Because He cannot get your attention to talk to you, to encourage you, to protect you, to tell you and communicate He's going to protect you and take care of you. So that's when it's really important to be alone. But then there's also times that we're alone when it's not good. And those times get us in trouble because most of our sin, most of our things that we do that are wrong happens when we're alone. And so there has to be that balance of I'm spending time with God to be alone. I'm getting away to rest. I'm getting away from people that drain me. I'm getting away and having some personal reflection. I'm going on a walk. I'm going to exercise. I'm doing these things that are for me. But then there's also, wow, this is when I'm not doing good things, and this is when I need to have those people in my life to help me.
That's just excellent. One of the things I've noticed in some people is when they are alone and they do feel that loneliness, their phone becomes their best friend, Chris. And they cannot seem to be without that phone. And they're constantly looking at it because that's their connection. Whether it's Facebook, whether it's texting, whatever it is, that seems to be their thing. And they can't go very long without looking at it. And I used to be that for different reasons because I'm running ministry through all of this. But I realized that it was distracting me too from having face-to-face conversation. And at the restaurant, I just leave my purse. I just leave my phone on my purse now. I don't even take it out unless I was waiting for an important call, from publisher or my husband or something like that. So, but really to keep it out of our face, it's just like constantly looking down. You don't even see what's outside, like going on a drive and all you do is spend your time on your phone. I've been guilty of that too because I'm busy, but I had to make, I guess what I'm saying is we have a better relationship with our phones than we do with people sometimes, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's actually, we're replacing that desire and that need for community. God, created community from the beginning. He brought Eve into Adam's life. And so He knows the importance of community with Him and community with others. We need each other. We need each other for accountability, support, encouragement, to let us know if life is going to be okay, that the world is not, that you're going to be able to make it tomorrow. This past weekend, we had a singles event at our in my home, and one of the girls that came had just lost her mother 2 days prior, and she was really really struggling, and she said, "You know what? I can't be at home alone because I don't know. When I'm there, it's like the enemy, that a lot of the negative thoughts and things and whatever. And she needed to get out. So she said, I want to be around people who love God. And so she came, and what an opportunity. And she was struggling. I could tell it was really difficult for her to be. We're all laughing and joking. But you know what was interesting is that at the end, we all got the chance to pray for her and lay hands and pray for her. And we prayed for her family. We prayed for her finances. And it made a huge difference in her life. And she responded, and she said, I'm not alone. I went, no. And we didn't even know her. She was a guest of someone else. And just to see the body of when you have those friendships, those deep friendships, well, you're not going to get those friends or those to come around you of people who are, living in their cell phones or living in their TV sets or whatever.
Yeah.
You have to consciously make an effort that I'm going to build relationships with people, and people are going to be more important. God, then people are going to be more important than my things, which those things often lead us to more loneliness. So.
Yeah, that's so good. One of the pages in Chain No More is the one about what's on my mind. And that there's a whole list of things, and we want them to write what kind of books they read, what kind of computer sites, what kind of, TV they watch, movies, whatever, and see what the benefit is of it and something that's not a benefit of it. And those are those times that you're by yourself, a lot of it. And you're correct.
Right.
Make an evaluation of listeners about what you're inputting into your brain, that big romance book or whatever, that can send you into something. Also, marriage. You're right. When you're married, you can get lonely. I know a lot of people, friends of mine, that have been that because life has taken their spouse somewhere else during the day, and then they're on their computers and phones at night. And I've had participants come into class very, very lonely, and they're married. So you're correct in that. For those who are single, the desire to get married and to have someone in their life is important. I mean, it just is. Many singles often go online to date, which for some has left them even lonelier. Talk to me about that whole thing, please.
Well, there was a few years that I was against it completely. I was like, oh, don't you even bring that subject up, and then as years went on, I remember pastors telling me, Chris, it comes up so much in our churches, we have to address it. They're out there doing it. So can you talk to us about it in a way that can be done in a good way? And so, I always tell people it's not where you meet someone, it's your motivation behind it. I mean, you can meet somebody in Walmart, although I wouldn't, recommend that, but you could. And so I tell people it's your motivation behind it. And so much of our motivation isn't to, ask God to help us find a mate because we really believe that's what God has put on our hearts. And we're going to, and this is one avenue that God is giving you to do it, and possibly be the avenue. But most of us are on there because there's just a desperate need to find someone, anyone. And what I find is that you have to have a really sharp skin, a thick skin to deal with the rejections, because there'll be a lot of them. And then second is, are you doing your homework and whatever when it comes to who you're meeting? A lot of us say, oh, I'm going to build a friendship and I'm going to get to know them and I'm going to really spend time and I'm not going to meet them anytime soon. And they're liars. They're all liars because all it takes is the right words from the opposite sex, the right phrases, just like you just said ago. What are we feeding? So if the enemy knows that your weakness is just someone to say, you know what, you sound great, or, I love your profile picture, or you really seem to know God, and I've just been looking for a woman my whole life that loves God. You're just going to go, and drool's going to come off of your lip, and you're going to be pulled in. And so what I find is they get pulled in because they want so desperately to have someone, and either they end up settling, and they end up going out with someone who is not where they are spiritually, is not where they are career-wise or personally, friendship goals, things that they've set. They find that they're not anybody they would ever normally go out with, but because they said some things that encouraged them or made them feel pretty or handsome, they have settled, and then they end up in this relationship online, which sometimes leads to seeing that person, which sometimes leads to other bad things. And so it's, if it's really something that God has put in your heart, this is an avenue, just like going to a singles event, just like going to a retreat, just like going and being around single friends. If that's what God has put in your heart, then do what you need to do to protect your heart in the process.
I agree. I know relationships who they did meet online and they're married and happily married. I also know people who have gone online and they have looked and then they have met them for dinner and they drive their own car or whatever and meet them there or whatever it is. But what happens is that rejection chips away at their self-esteem every single time, one chip after the other. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not, and I've seen that so many times, and then that just brings them further into isolation, and they want to give up, and they don't feel they have any worth.
Yes.
Yes.
Online dating is so much about a physical, and I don't have the stats with me, but I've done some of this research on my website, and you can look it up. But men lie most about their age, and I think women lie most about their weight. And both put pictures of themselves that are old. And so I think if you're going to lie the very first moment you meet somebody by putting an incorrect profile picture or your age or whatever, if you're willing to lie, then where's the rest of the relationship?
Correct.
And so we're so obsessed. I mean, literally, I just read an article about women posing themselves on Facebook has become like this. They're actually altering their Facebook photos so that they look better. And I'm just thinking to myself, people probably would laugh at mine because I'm always being stupid and silly and crazy. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, we are still so obsessed with outer that how do you even get to know the inner when you're just so focused on the outside? And so when you're not maybe the prettiest person or the thinnest person, and you feel like people are looking for that, then you are either going to not put your real picture or your real information, or you're going to deal with a lot of rejection because that's what maybe the other person's looking for. So for me online, yes, are there some? Sure, there's some that met at Walmart are probably married today. But for me, I say, you know what, I'd rather take my chances within my community. And at least I can get to know a person inside first before the outside.
Yes. We're going to talk with Chris on the other side of the break.
Host and author Robin Beesman returns after this short break for more conversation on Chained No More.
In today's business world, a helping hand or idea that doesn't come with an invoice is a treasured find. And if that happens to you, then you need to pay it forward to keep other entrepreneurs from making mistakes or getting a raw deal. It's called Paying It Forward with Josephine Girassi. Wednesday mornings at 10, 9 a.m. Central. Josephine is going to have the guests describe their accomplishments, the lessons they've learned, both good and bad, and then sharing those pieces of knowledge as we create a movement of paying it forward. For more information about Josephine, her business, and background, you can go to mymomknowsbest.com. Josephine Girassi has always been a problem solver. She saw this need and has turned it into a movement. It's Paying It Forward with tips, tools, advice, and hard lessons learned. These pieces of knowledge can make a huge difference for you, your business, and others. So join us for Paying It Forward with Josephine Girassi. Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Central on TogiNet.com. If you're ready for a big change in your work, your career, your happiness, your life, it's time for the $1 Million Mindset with Marla Tabaka. Monday afternoons at 2, 1 Central on TogiNet.com. Marla believes that with the right mindset, anything is possible. Join us as successful life coach Marla Tabaka inspires you and her clients to explore, discover, and live your dreams by developing what she calls the $1 Million Mindset. Marla will inspire you to take action on your dreams and reveal secrets to success that will help you realize your own unique power. Tune into the $1 Million Mindset for heartwarming stories with Marla Tabaka. Learn tips and tricks to building a successful business and unlock the secrets to creating a happier, more balanced life through abundant thinking and attraction power. For more information on the $1 Million Mindset, go to our website, marlatabaka.com. That's MarlaTabaka.com. It's the $1 Million Mindset with Marla Tabaka. Monday afternoons at 2, 1 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
Welcome back to a place you'll find acceptance, understanding, and encouragement, as well as effective tools and resources to help you find healing from the stuff that gets in the way of your making emotional progress. Now with more of today's Chained No More, Robin Beesman.
Well, listeners, even though you go to break, Chris and I are still yakking. It's just so natural, and it's such a blessing. I really appreciate you, Chris, and I love the connection we have. I can hear myself in you, and you say, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, how many times do I say that? It's just so cool. Okay, so
Yes.
down to the basic, I think we've talked about this, and we can move on from there. But what causes loneliness? But also, what have you learned? What have you seen in your personal and ministry life, and what loneliness can do?
Wow. So many times, I was sharing with you over the break that I lived in a bubble for a long time in which I deal with mainly Christians and in what I do, and I build a lot of leaderships, and I just assumed that they were all living like I was. They were celibate. They were waiting for God. They were listening to God. They were growing in God, and so on and so forth. And I was really somewhat of a fool. I just truly believed that everybody was kind of where I was. And then as time went on, as I began to get to know people personally and hear more of their stories, I was realizing that a lot of them were really one foot in the world and one foot in God. And they were, yes, I go to church, I'm in my Bible study, but this guy came along and
Yeah.
and he said all the right things, or this girl came along and she said all the right things, and they're in a physical relationship. And they go, well, at least it's just one person, or I'm not in a physical, but I'm in what's called a friendationship. And some people call friend relationship, some friendationship, but it's this in-between place, Robin, where you're more than a friend, but you're not in a committed relationship towards marriage. And so I find, especially among older singles, I'm finding this more so than younger singles, is that they own a house. They're not going to give up their house. They don't necessarily want to get married to that person, but they don't want to be alone. And so they'll be in this in-between place that's not really committed, or they want to get married desperately, and so they'll give in and do a lot of things in a relationship, but yet there's still no commitment. So I see that happening. And then I see a lot of our young people that are saying, you know what, I can get married down the road, and so right now I'm just going to have fun. And so they're in a lot of relationships that are very either physical, or they're just there's not a real deep commitment to them. And as a result, they're finding themselves also dealing with some of those loneliness issues. And it's not, they think it's going to fix them and make them happy and complete them. But as we all know, it doesn't complete you. So
No, it just chips away. It chips away at who you are, and you don't know who you are because you're putting your definition on that person and what they say about you. It's not who.
Yes.
Then it's not what what God says about you. It's what somebody else told you or did to you or whatever.
Right.
So,
this is one of my mottos. People who've heard me, my own singles, have heard probably every story I've ever said over and over. But I say that eventually everything you own in life will break, and every person that you know will die. So you cannot put your life, you cannot attach yourself to things. You can embrace it, but everything will eventually go away if you live long enough. So the only thing you can attach yourself to is the thing that doesn't, which is God. And so with that understanding in my head, I went, oh my goodness, even some friendships, I know that maybe, I can't become too obsessed with even some of them. But with the idea of thinking that I'm going to attach myself to this man or this woman or this particular job or my phone or food or whatever it is that makes me feel good. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I'm on my own journey of weight loss, and I've lost a little over 100 pounds. And for the longest time, and I've heard many people say this, food is my best friend. Food fills the loneliness. Food fills me when I'm hurting and rejected and broken, and there's nobody here. Food does not reject me. And so I totally understand. I mean, I ate because I enjoyed it, but I also understand that part of it as well. And so I think that all of this, when you do not have your hope in Jesus Christ, and you don't have a relationship with Jesus, and you don't have what that looks like and how that grows, then the enemy comes in and he will put everything else in front of you that's attractive, things that are really you're wanting, and can easily pull you away. And all it does is put you in a deeper, deeper pit.
Yeah. I have also seen people who will look outward and they're so busy taking care of everybody else, but they don't look at themselves and be able to work on that. And so that's something else to look at. I want to do a couple of these together, Chris, because
Okay.
some of the ways we try to cope with loneliness that are not helpful, and then positive ways to cope with the loneliness we may be feeling. So, talk to me about the good and the bad, how to cope with loneliness. How about that?
Well, we've stated some of the things is that, we know some of the things that are not good, which is, okay, I'm just going to be at home and get my bucket of ice cream and my movie channel. And so while that's good in some ways, because I enjoy being at home and making a
Hmm.
nice dinner and watching TV, but it's done in a different way. It's in a more healthy approach than I'm
Sure.
going to isolate myself. So what I find for some is the unhealthy part of it is isolating yourself, because the world doesn't seem to care about you. You're not going to care about the world. And
Hmm.
I love, in the movie Shrek, where, he finally rescued the princess. And, it's such a great movie about four, messed up singles that, all find each other. And Shrek says, I'm going to move back and I'm going to build that wall and I'm going to keep everybody out. And Donkey's like, what? Even me? Because he thought he was his friend. And it really says sends a message of that's what happens, is that you get to where the more you're alone, the more you want to be alone or feel like you have to be alone. Um,
Hmm.
so that's the negative of what happens, is that you start to have the mental language starts to tell you that you don't deserve to have anybody. This is the way it's always going to be. And
Hmm.
so then why have anybody? Then just be by yourself. And again, that's not the way God designed us.
Hmm.
So going back on the positive ways to cope with being lonely is to first stop saying you're lonely. If you know Jesus Christ, just say, hey, I'm alone, and some days I don't like it. And having people in your life to say, hey, I don't like being alone. Do you? No, I don't like being alone. And you can get to where you kind of laugh about it. You get to where you find humor in it. You get to where you find, well, what do you do that helps you in those tough times? You pick up the phone. You call somebody and say, hey, I'm really struggling today. You build that community that you so desperately you need. Now, some people I know are probably listening going, Chris, I'm not like you and Robin. I don't have this big personality. You know, you probably really just walk into a room and people just automatically come towards you.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter. You still have to make the effort, because even with my personality, friendships don't come immediately. You still have to take the time to build them.
That's
So
right.
for those out there that are more quiet, more reserved, it's harder. Maybe there's a lot of baggage. Maybe they've had a lot of pain. Maybe
Hmm.
there's a lot of mistakes, and they think that they can't be anybody's friend, or maybe some of their baggage comes with them. Well, sometimes we need to get some counseling. I'm a big supporter of counseling. And if you find that a lot of reasons why, when you're around people that don't want to be around you is maybe what you're bringing with you, what you're
Yep.
bringing up in conversations and in relationships with the opposite sex. And so some of us need counseling to deal with some of our hurt and our pains. Some of us definitely need our relationship with God to begin with, and one that's growing. And then others need that community. It's like, where's our singles group? Somewhere there's a singles group, a group of people,
Hmm.
even if it's just 4 or 5 that go to dinner. But having that to look forward to
Yeah.
makes the biggest difference. People have pets. I'm not a big pet person, but I know people love them. And I know that helps fill a lot of that really time that we really struggle being alone.
Yeah. I'm really big, Chris, on getting resources for people when I hear where they're hurting, try to figure out
Yeah.
where I can send them, what I can get for them. And there is a church in our area that has a singles group, and that's where I send them at least. Tried to get one in our church, haven't been able to do that. They used to have a real vibrant one, and things change, of course, but we're trying to work toward that again, to have a singles group, because we have a large church. And there's an
Yes.
awful lot of people who are adults and who are living alone, so that could really be helpful. I also find that when you want to reach out, one of the things, you're correct, it's that baggage that they bring in, and so they think they don't want to take a chance again because it's been so burned.
Right.
And so one of the
Right.
big things, like next week in our classes, we will start. They have a huge page on trust/betrayal. And that's where they begin to look at what does it take to build trust? What does it take to break trust with me? And then to begin to look at their relationships, begin to see where they can put their boundaries up, but still be open. How to start a new relationship, a friendship, I should say. Start a friendship with someone of the same gender. Do those things. Go to dinner. Start building trust in one another. And, it's magnificent to watch them heal and begin to see them smile again and get out there again. So that's my goal. And really, Chris, this show is part of that. So I'm so grateful.
Well,
is there something? Go ahead.
Well, there's a great little story about a penny on the ground where an old man and old woman were going to a restaurant, and the guy bends over, the husband bends over, and his wife thinks he's having a stroke. He finally bends back up, and he has a penny. And she said, "Why did you reach down to get a penny? It's worthless." And he says, "What's on that penny?" Well, in America, our money still says, "In God we trust." And he says, every time he finds a penny, which most people don't pick up anymore, it reminds him, am I trusting you at this very moment? And so I think a lot of times if we would, and now hopefully everybody where they look, they're going to see it. Even if you're in another country, you're going to even see a coin in your country. Just remember the American coin has, "In God we trust." Are you trusting God at that moment? So a lot of times you'll be out and about shopping that day or not looking forward to coming home, out for the weekend, or, the weekend's coming up and you dread it. You'd rather Monday come. So at least at work you have people around you. And you're going to find that coin, and God's going to say, "Are you trusting me right now?" And that's when you need to get down on your knees and need to say, "I'm not, and I'm struggling in this area right here," and give that to him. And so that trust issue is such a big deal because we're not trusting. That only adds, again, to that isolation. And I'm just saying in my own life, in my own journey, I've had some of the same issues that have come up. And without my community of friends around me, if I didn't have them, I don't know where I'd be, Robin. I don't know where I'd be.
You just feel like you're drowning. You're just trying to reach up, but you can't. Then the ones that I know too, they just quit reaching. And that's who I want to get to through this podcast, is to reach out, take another step. We have about a minute to go. Can you begin to tell us with the loneliness how it differs between ages? If so, are the coping skills different?
Well, I think in your 20s, as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, the 20s are, I obviously sense a felt of loneliness. A lot of it is that you're getting out of living with your family, or you're still living with your family. And so you're just trying to figure out life. And so a lot of times you're trying to make those choices, and you haven't made a lot of mistakes yet. And so in your 20s, you feel like you have plenty of time to do lots of different things. And so you just, it's very different. And once you get a little age on you, and you've got some mistakes and some bad choices and bad relationships, then the walls come up. Then you're not so fearless, and then all of a sudden you become afraid. And so I think that definitely as age it gets worse, but also in age you should be getting closer to God. So while you have,
we're going to go into a break, Chris.
Okay,
we need to go to the break, and we'll finish that thought at the other side of the break.
Host and author Robin Beesman returns after this short break for more conversation on Chained No More.
Military Network Radio, Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, bringing you dynamic interviews each week and fresh information of value to improve your outlook, actions, and encourage each member of your family. From service members, wounded warriors, veterans, military spouses, caregivers, parents, and children, everyone serves, and together we can make a difference. You can find our show at our website, www.militarynetworkradio.com, and at toginetradio.com/Military Network Radio. Everyone serves, and together we make a difference.
Is there more living for you to do? Yes. Start living inspired. Be here for Living Inspired with Tricia Goyer, Thursday afternoons at 4, 3 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com. Tricia will dig deep into topics that matter most to women, inspiring women to make a change in their own lives and to make a difference in the world, and maybe even deep within their own hearts. Tricia is a wife, mom, speaker, family expert, and author of 24 books. For more information on Tricia and Living Inspired, go to her website, TriciaGoyer.com. That's TriciaGoyer.com. Trisha's vision is to be the voice of hope and possibility for women of all ages. Her intention is to serve ordinary women by encouraging extraordinary things with God's help. Trisha expresses real life, real hope for real women. Is there more living for you to do? Yes. Start living inspired. Living Inspired with Trisha Goyer. Thursday afternoons at 4, 3 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
Welcome back to a place you'll find acceptance, understanding, and encouragement, as well as effective tools and resources to help you find healing from the stuff that gets in the way of your making emotional progress. Now with more of today's Chained No More, Robin Beesman.
Unbelievable, listeners, that this is the last segment of the show. I could just talk, like we say, we could just talk forever. I think no matter where Chris and I were, we would just be yakking until we fell asleep in the chair. I don't know. All right. So we were talking about the differences in ages and how different ages cope with living alone. I also want to know, Chris, what do you think about what are some of the very, very first steps? If somebody's sitting there right now listening to us and they're saying, well, maybe there is hope, what is the first step they need to do, Chris?
Well, this is interesting you say this. Recently, I just had a gathering at my home, and I went out and actually invited neighbors to my home. Now, that seems like, well, that's not a big deal. Well, today, nobody does that. So the very first thing is, do you know your neighbors? The people that right, whether you're in an apartment, whether you're in a house, whatever it is in your community. So we invited our neighbors over just to get to know the people in our street, because it is important that even as you live your life, and what's interesting is my mother now, my father passed away and my mother lives with me, and a couple of the neighbors said, we watch, and when your mother doesn't come outside, we know something's wrong. Oh. And I thought it was so great that there was people that I knew that cared about her to watch for her. So the more your neighbors would know about you and know your life, that's going to help you in that beginning process of going, I feel so alone. It's not a privacy issue. We don't, I know that some of us are like, well, I don't want them to know my business. They need to know something. Okay, that's where it starts. Then getting involved in your community. Does your neighborhood have? Do they do a gathering of some kind? What about serving within your community? Does your House for Habitat, or one of those types of programs that you can serve in besides your church? Because again, that's going to build some relationships and some friendships too, and it's going to allow you to look forward to something. What's neat out of all of this is that relationships will form, and you may only get one or two, but how many can you spend time with anyway? True. And so we desire maybe this big group, but to be honest with you, you can only really be close to just 2 or 3 people. And so as you begin to, for me personally as a Christian, I would be praying. But if you're not a Christian, in the same way of just seeking out and saying, who around me would look like somebody that I'd like to get to know, and start asking those questions that would lead to more than yes or no answers. Where did you grow up? Or how did you come to live in this city? How did you come to live in this neighborhood? Why are you here serving in this area? What brought you to serve and help a homeless person or whatever? And you'll find you'll have things in common. And then you go, oh, my goodness, this person is somebody I can enjoy hanging out with. And that's going to begin to give you that need of that community that you're so wanting. And then guess what? This is the cool thing, Robin, is that then there's somebody that will ask you, how was your day? How was your week? There's somebody that you can use that smartphone for and text and say, hey, I've got an appointment at the doctor. Would you be thinking of me or praying for me? Hey, I'm getting ready to study for this test. Hey, I'm getting ready to go on this journey. Would you watch my home? Or hey. Then you've got those things that are going to help you, and then you're not going to be so alone and go, I'm not the only one going through this. There are others, and I don't have to be by myself anymore.
Well, and that's exactly what I was going to say, is that you're not, the more we look around, the more we, there's a lot of people that walk around by themselves, and, you can strike up a conversation. It doesn't have to be like our personalities, but just enough to care, or you're just not the only one feeling lonely. So to start taking a chance at that, it doesn't mean you have to tell them your whole life. I mean, at first, So
they may not want to be around you then after that. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, thanks for playing. Okay, so, Chris, I'm going to ask you how your faith has affected your outlook on being lonely or being alone.
One of my favorite parts of the Bible is in the end of when Christ is on the cross. And he's dying on the cross. And there are only two people there, his best friend John, his mother, and Mary Magdalene, which is a friend, very important, two friends. And in his last breath, he made sure his single mother, his widowed mother, is taken care of by his friend John. He didn't ask his siblings, he asked his friend. And so when I see that in the end of Jesus' life, he was concerned about a single woman, a widow, to take care of her, I know he's going to take care of me.
Oh,
he gets it. And he positioned her beside his friend that was a female and her friend that was male. So he's got you if you want him to get you, And so friendship is important. Whether you believe in God or not, friendships are important because they're going to help mold and shape you. You're around the wrong ones, they're going to take you down the wrong way, but they're around to where they encourage you and lift you and support you and are there when those tough days come. It's going to make the biggest difference on how you think about yourself and what you do as a result of how you think about yourself.
That's just awesome, Chris.
So.
Okay, listeners, I know you're going to want to get to her stuff, her website and her resources. So, Chris, tell us about your ministry and how our listeners can connect with you and your resources.
Well, I have two different websites. One is called FromHisHands.com, which is my overall speaking site. And I work with churches on lots of things, from single parent ministries, single adults, to women, to leadership, just because I have a heart and passion to build leaders, which in turn build others. And so that is a big area of what I do. But also I have the largest website for single adult ministry in the world that I know of called thesinglesnetwork.org. And it is, and again, thesinglesnetwork.org. It is like the Wikipedia of singles ministry, and every resource that I can find to help you, encourage you in your personal walk, as well as in being a leader or a pastor. And it is just, I continue to add to it. I always look for other articles and resources sent to me. If there's something not on there, a book that you've read or a resource or an article, I love to hear from you. You can also sign up to get my newsletter. You can also sign up to be on my prayer team. I have a prayer team that prays for me every Tuesday. And so, I want to hear from you. I want to hear what God is saying to you. After the last broadcast, I heard from a lot of you. My door is open. Email me. Go to the site, get my email address, email me and tell me, this is an area issue that I'm struggling with, and where can I go? What's the next step to help me?
Yep, and that's not just in the United States. Chris does stuff outside, so it's awesome to see.
I do.
Yeah, it's just everywhere. I mean, we want to encourage. I hear my heart in you, that you just want people to find hope. And that's my ministry word, Chris, to give people hope. From the first time we have a class, the first night, to these shows, every single time, that I want you to, when you get done with this show, listeners, you get done hearing that you have hope in your heart that things can change. And Chris, you've done a magnificent job of that today. So I thank you for joining us on Chain No More. Next week, listeners, author and speaker Michelle Howell will join us again, and this time she will be talking about quite an emotional issue that so many of us have lived or are living right now. Maybe a little bit for you, Chris. Her topic will be about caring for our aging parents.
Yes.
I have many friends who are experiencing that now and need answers on how to make the right decisions, how to love and care for them well while dealing with their own emotions. It is going to be a great hour. We had her on before, and she was really helpful about the empty nest. She gets it, and I know a lot of people were helped and blessed by that. So just like today, I think you'll be really, really blessed by hearing her. That's Michelle Howell. So that will be next week. Chris, I'm going to close in prayer, okay? And then we have a couple more things.
Thank you.
Father God, thank you so much for this new friend. Thank you for giving her the passion and the calling on her life that you have. She has your heart, and you can tell. And Lord, I pray that what listeners heard today will help them to be able to rise out of their loneliness and be able to step forward and meet new people and be able to have more joy in their life, God. No matter how much they've been hurt, Lord, please guide them to the right people that they can learn to trust and they can learn to have relationships. If it is a romantic relationship they're looking for, God, please help them to hear your voice. Help them not to step ahead of you in your plan for them, but help them to make the steps that they feel they want to, and then to hear you in that. Thank you for for having us love one another, God. I am so appreciative for being able to wrap arms around people, whether it's on the air or in person, to be able to say in the name of Jesus, you are loved, you are accepted, and we care about you. And thank you for TogiNet, for allowing us to have this show that can go around the world and bring hope to people. I pray for Chris's ministry, Lord. I pray that it will just continue to be magnifying you and to bring people closer to you and your comfort and your love and your joy, God. And for her, I pray for her and her mom that continue to have a really good relationship and enjoy their times together. Thank you, Lord, for making Chris. And thank you for what you're doing with her. In the name of Jesus. Amen. Listeners, please tell your friends about Chain No More Talk Radio. There are tens of thousands of you listening every week around the globe, and we want to continue to provide helpful and encouraging programs for you. If you have suggestions for a topic, I keep my ear to the ground whenever it's just like this subject right here. People kept coming to me and hurting, and so if you have a suggestion for a topic, please email me at Robin, R-O-B-Y-N, Robin at robinbministries.com. I'll say it again, Robin at robinbministries.com. And remember, send people to our podcast. You know how to do that. It's www.toginet.com/shows/Chain No More, and it takes you right to the show page, and they'll be able to get to this podcast and be encouraged too. So thank you for joining us on that. Chris, is there anything else that you'd like to say to encourage our listeners today?
Oh, I just don't allow others or the enemy to discourage you, and just know that, God is working in your life if you want him to. And my favorite life verse is John 10:10. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but Christ came to give life. And I believe life is going to have ups and downs, but it's going to be amazing once you let him control you versus yourself.
Yeah, I think one of the really important things you said too, so many of them, but one of the things that stands out to me is not listening to what others have told you or experiences have done to you and how you've defined yourself, but to truly listen to what God says you are. If you don't even know that, you may not even have a Bible, I don't know. But if you do, to get there and start looking up things, there's a concordance in the back of the Bible you can look for, and you can find about love, you can find about him, what he says about you, all kinds of stuff, and be able to move forward in that, because we can get buried. That's what Chain No More is all about. We can get buried in our junk and how we've defined ourselves, and to watch those links break one at a time. I'm telling you, listeners, to watch the eyes rise in the class. I cannot tell you what happens and how marriages are changed and how people are changed, and they have hope again, and they're not what they thought they were. They're exactly who God said they are, nothing more and nothing less. And that's the hope, and that's the joy, and that's what Chris is all about, is to bring joy, show people how to get to that joy in God, and that's just really, really awesome. Chris, you're amazing. I really, really love talking with you. Awesome.
Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you for joining us, listener, today, and we will see you next week with Michelle Howell on Chain No More. Can't wait to get to it, and we're out. Thanks so much for joining us.
A show of answers and encouragement for what you face today. You can learn more about Robin B. Ministries, read her blog, and purchase encouraging resources at www.robinbministries.com. There, you will be able to purchase the small group curriculum and self-discovery versions of Chained No More, as well as Robin's latest CD, Through the Rain, Crisis to Hope. Books are also available on Amazon.com.